sometimes there is a glut of a certain type of book in the market. For example, the expat memoir, okay? Especially the type of expat memoir where a couple moves to old Europe and renovates a house in the countryside, okay? This rage was started by Peter Mayle's book, A Year in Provence. It's a good book. This British couple buy this 200-year-old house in Provence, and they have their adventures with local customs and struggles with the language. Then I think that was in 1989. In 1996, Francis May's book came out, Under the Tuscan Sun, At Home in Italy. Both of these were turned into films, successful films. And then, to get the third old European country in there, although there are others, you got Chris Stewart's Driving Over Lemons, an Optimist in Andalucía, that came out in 1999, where he takes over this abandoned ranch in the Alpujarras region, which is outside of Granada. All these books, as I say, are entertaining, good books. I'm not talking down on them. I'm talking about the books that started the rage. Then, after publishers saw that this type of genre sold, they saturated the market with mediocre books, But the challenge is, how do you make this expat genre new? That's the hard part, I also fall into this category, My memoir, My Half Orange, A Story of Love and Language in Seville, there was also this problem, Like, why am I going to do anything different to what's been done before? And my claim to any kind of difference is that my wife is a local, So I have this sharper perspective of what it means to be Spanish or Sevillian, because first I fall in love with her, then I fall in love with the language, then I fall in love with Spain, Andalucía, and Seville. It works like that, So that's where my book sort of carves out a place in this niche, I hope, And then you got the book that we're talking about today, which is French Dive, Living More with Less in the South of France, published by Eric Fries in 2020 by a publishing house, an independent publishing house called Slant Books, Eric Fries, I think, also carves out a place in this niche, and we're going to talk about that in this review mainly, But first I want to say something about Slant Books. Slant Books is this small publishing house that I think was founded in 2018 through 2019. It was launched and then relaunched, and it's overseen, and it was founded by an interesting guy named Gregory Wolfe, who was a writer himself, but also an editor. He's one of these, I would say, highbrow Christians, I think he's Catholic. He writes about art, mystery, grace, faith. He's written essays on that, I come from this type of people, I don't necessarily agree with them, but I respect them. They don't believe blindly. They've thought deeply about the way they live and the stances they take, and their moral compass. It comes through many, many years of refining it through thought and rigor. And so he's founded this press, Slant Books, which I think is good, because a guy like this is going to go against the grain of, I think, political correctness that I think runs rampant in the publishing world today. So I was drawn first to the publishing house. And then I discovered this book by Eric Fries, which I was very pleasantly surprised by. Eric Fries is a professor of creative writing at Wabash College in Crawfordsville, Indiana. He's written a couple of books of short stories, and another book of nonfiction essays, or book of essays called Hemingway on a Bike. I think that came out in 2014 with the University of Nebraska Press. His wife is also an academic. They've got 4 kids. 4 kids between the ages of 1 and 7, 2 years apart. He takes a sabbatical year on half salary. They buy a 700 square foot apartment. He's the only one that's seen it. His family hasn't seen it. In Old Nice. And they move there, committed to this plan or this mission to make things work. Why is he doing it? Not for any real romantic reasons, but because he wants his kids to have a complete immersion experience with French. He speaks French with his kids. He's Canadian, so he must have learned it in Canada. He must have some French-Canadian roots. And he also wants everything nearby. He's sort of sick of, North American car culture. He wants everything within walking distance, which is why he moves to Old Nice. But he's obviously taking a risk, right? I mean, there's no net for him. He's not going on a grant, okay? He doesn't have this cushy job set up for himself, okay? So that he knows he can live 18 months and then return to the States. His plan is ultimately to live 6 months in one place and 6 months in the other place, but he's putting his job at risk by doing this, okay? He doesn't have the money to do it, and he's living in this tiny apartment. 700 square feet is so tiny in North American terms. Let's just speak about the United States here, okay? I don't really know about Canada, okay? 700 square feet. My friends from America, they come to my apartment. They can't believe that I live in this apartment with my wife and 2 sons. They can't believe it, okay? My apartment is about 700 square feet. It's got 3 small bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. That's it, okay? It's an urban environment, okay? Everyone's living on top of one another. Everything is within walking distance. You can do your shopping. You don't need a car. Having a car is actually a hassle to have a car in Seville. As it is, I think, a hassle in Nice or Old Nice. He writes a chapter about that, or he writes something about that, okay? Another thing about this book is he's a good writer. That's kind of a cliche when people say the writing's good. What do I mean by that? I mean that he is capable of putting a lot in a sentence. And the sentences are sonorous. They have rhythm. They have power. He's a very subtle writer. They're kind of like a hybrid of thought in narrative essays. He weaves themes together. He can build something out of nothing. He'll write a chapter about, taking these kids blindfolded to different spots in Old Nice, different nooks and crannies of it, and then having them find their way home, or having them lead him home, okay? Or there's another chapter about taking his son to buy a spearfishing gun, right? Like, he needs to actually fish to put food on the table, okay? See what I'm talking about as far as commitment? So he buys this spear gun and he goes on this trip with his kid with buses, and they don't have the timing right or the schedule right, and it turns into this great adventure with his son. They find these grapes on the way home. It's really beautiful. It's beautiful stuff. And then the best chapters in the book, I think, are the spearfishing chapters. He goes out alone, risks his life, really. It has this real metaphoric weight because he's out of his element, alone, fishing in the Mediterranean. The odds are against him. He's holding his breath so that he can basically live with the fish or live among the fish and catch them by surprise, right? And underneath the water, he'll find things like this. He thinks it's a body, but it ends up being this statue of a virgin that's been sunk under the water. Or one day he finds this GoPro, and there's this chapter about, seeing the videos on it and trying to find the owner. Really well done stuff. It's a literary book, but it's not a boring literary book. There's other scenes where he brings in help Xers. I guess it's this company where you can match up with people who want to travel the world, and you put them up at your home and for free, you give them lodging and food, and they help renovate your apartment. So 3 or 4 different people come into his home, and they're interesting people. A guy named Gregory who kind of flirts with homelessness. He's probably the guy that comes most off the page. Also, there's this French couple that comes in very judgmental of the way he's rearing his children. That's kind of got some delicious tension in the chapter. If I were being really picky, I wish that these people came off the page more. Like, I wish I knew more about his his real estate agent, or this guy, I think his name is Jad, I think he's Muslim, who comes and helps him knock down walls. Again, he's more of I would say, an idea guy as a writer than he is interested in people. And I think that comes across. And then there's this interesting section about, I think there's a reality TV show called House Hunters International. I've never seen it. But he applies to be on that program. And it's very interesting to watch how he observes and exposes the lie behind this reality TV show. It made me think. The book makes you think. All right? It made me think about how can we really understand what it's like to live abroad. It's really only through books. I don't think video can do it. I don't think reality TV can do it. And the book shows why that's the case. I mean, the only way to really know it is to do it, right? But if you have someone like Eric Fries writing, you get some real insight into it. You know, it's very much about him and his hobbies and what he thinks about and does. You know, there's a lot of focus on him renovating the house, what he does. He gets into the detail with that type of stuff. Also, he's very socially conscious. He's a very socially conscious guy. Maybe, again, if I have a bone to pick with him, I would say there's too much white guy bleeding heart stuff. You know, feeling bad for the fish that he kills, or feeling the ugliness of it, or talking about racism, or his privilege, or homelessness, or, you know, white male privilege. I always wonder, like, why people do that. Like, what is his motivation for doing that? Like, is he trying to convince us? Is he trying to distance himself from, let's say, the cliches that I think ignorant people put on white people? Is he trying to absolve himself, apologize? I don't know. I don't really know. I would have left it out of the book. I didn't learn anything new from that. But again, it might be just what he thinks. And if he's being true to himself, he should include it. You know, there's a point in the book where he asks, like, why is he happy here? Why is he happy in France? And he gives the answer, it's because it's where his plan worked out. Right? It's not really, I don't think, a book about Nice. I mean, of course that comes into it, but it's really more about this guy and his vision of the world, Eric Fries, and his family's vision and their mission, and how they make it work, and they do make it work, and how it's colored their life as expats. That's why I would recommend the book. That's why this guy, you know, this bohemian character, he mentions at a point in the book where he and his wife, before they had kids, roamed around Europe or France, spending just €5 a day. This is the type of person he is and his wife is. They don't need a lot to live well, but they live well. They live richly. And this book is about a family without much means who live well in old Europe. That's why I recommend this book. And that's why I think he's really carved out a niche for himself in this genre, because of his integrity and his writing ability and his observational skills. Yeah, pick up the book. You're going to enjoy it.